Anybody there?
Hello?
Yes. This is Dwayne.
Hi, this is Administrative Law Judge Melissa Kim. Is this Dwayne Kellum?
This is Dwayne Kellum.
Calling for your hearing. Are you ready?
Before we get started, I have a motion for continuance.
Okay, let me get the parties on.
Okay.
And I'll hear your motion.
Okay.
Okay, hold on 1 second, please.
Okay. Would I be able to email a copy of it to you so that you all can see what I'm reading?
Let me get the other parties on. Hold on 1 second, please.
Okay. Hi, Paul.
Hi, is this Paul on?
Yes.
This is Administrative Law Judge Melissa Kim calling for the hearing for Dwayne Kellum. I understand you're representing the employer, is that correct?
That is correct.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, so I also understand you have a witness, is that correct?
That is correct.
I'm going to go ahead and call him right now, if you could stand by.
Sure.
And I want to confirm, Mr. Kellum, are you on the line?
I'm still on the line.
Okay, hold on 1 second, please.
This is Michael.
Hi, is this Michael Scott?
That's correct.
This is Administrative Law Judge Melissa Kim. I'm calling for the hearing for Dwayne Kellum.
Okay.
Spinning back to Mr. On, I want to indicate to you that when I called Mr. Kellum, he explained that he wanted to be heard on a motion to continue. So I want to begin with that. But I also want to, hold on 1 second. Actually, go ahead, Mr. Kellum.
Okay. Would you like me to read the statement that I prepared, or did you want a copy of it before I read it?
Can you explain to me what your motion to continue is based on?
Okay. It's based on several things, but the main issue was I got the notice of hearing late, and I also got the amended notice of hearing late.
When you say late, when did you get? When you say late, when did you get both?
I got them in reverse order too. I got the amended notice first, and I got that on March 9th of 2022, and it was the deadline was March 11th, 2022 to get documents and to make arrangements with you all. It was like 2 days. It was really 1 day because I got it in the evening.
Okay, so my understanding is you wanted to submit something and it was too close to the deadline indicated on that notice of hearing?
Yeah. It was no way that I can get the information that I needed and also to get it back to you in 2 days.
Did you submit
and the
it?
other one came on the 12th.
Did you submit it after
No.
the deadline? Okay.
Because I read the paperwork and it said that it had to be in the office
okay,
by
so
the deadline.
Mr. Kellum will get into,
deadline.
for right now, I am denying your motion. If this is evidence that you're saying is relevant and you want me to consider this evidence, when you testify, I will hear from you as to this evidence. Okay?
Okay, well, I needed some witnesses I needed witnesses, and I needed some information from the EDD itself. So I can't really do my case the way I want to do it without that information, and that was part of what I was going to say in my motion for continuance.
Okay, understood. Is that all in terms of that issue?
I'm sorry, ma'am. Could you repeat, please?
Is that all in terms of that issue, or did you want to include any other issues?
Okay. I needed some information from the EDD. I also needed to have some witnesses subpoenas, and let me see let me read my note. Hold on one second. Okay, so like I said earlier, the first part of the motion was because I received the notice on the 9th of March and also on the 12th of March. The actual notice I got on the 12th of March, which is after the deadline given on the document to have the request sent to your office. So
you received the original notice of hearing on March 12th. Is that right?
On March, yes, ma'am, March
okay.
12th,
and
according to the document, I had to have it submitted to the office on March 10th.
Understood.
So there was no way I could get the questions and stuff answered and submit the documents and stuff to you.
Understood. So I've already ruled on that part. As
okay.
to the second
right.
issue.
The second thing, I needed 3 witnesses from DTA to be present during the hearing, and then I also needed the EDD to deliver some documents to me for discovery purposes concerning employees and stuff. And then also I needed the EDD to give me the recordings that they made of me having conversations with their investigators about the claim.
Okay, so I just counted 3 items.
The reason why I needed that was because of, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just counted 3 items that you're saying you need more time to look into.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I need also the time to go over the information I get from the EDD.
Understood.
Because I was reading the paperwork that I got in the mail, and
Mr. Kellum? Mr. Kellum?
All of that stuff was like, yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm going to tell you right now, this is the time and place for your hearing. I understand what you're saying in terms of these 3 items. I will hear from you during your testimony as to why these 3 items are relevant and consider possibly resetting the hearing. Okay, so meaning there will be a part 2. But for right now, I'm denying the motion. Okay? We are going to begin.
Okay.
The record in this case for the following case number, 713-9359 to 713-9361, for Dwayne Kellum are now open on 3/24/22 at 1:12 p.m. in the Inglewood Office of Appeals. I'm Administrative Law Judge Melissa Kim. In this telephone hearing, appearing by phone, is the claimant. Can you please state your name?
I'm not the claimant. I am the authorized representative of the claimant. My name is Dwayne Kellum. The name on the document is written in the form of a corporation. I'm not a corporation. I'm a living, breathing human being.
I'm not understanding what you're saying. So what I see here, let me finish. Let me get to the question mark. Mr. Kellum, I'm sorry, Mr. Kellum. Let me get to the question mark. Okay?
Okay.
On my notice of hearing, those are the yellow notices. I have in the upper left corner Dwayne Kellum. I don't have an LLC. I don't have an Inc.
Okay. A corporation is spelled with all capital letters. My name is not spelled with all capital letters.
I don't know where you got that from. That is not correct. As to our notices of hearing.
I am not Dwayne S. Kellum the way it's spelled on the paper.
Okay. So my question to you is.
My name is.
What is your name?
Is capital D, lowercase W, A-Y-N-E, capital L, capital K, lowercase E, L-L-U-M. My name is not in all caps. I do not write my name in all caps. I do not answer to names in all caps. That's
Okay.
not me.
So I'm going to refer to you as Mr. Kellum. Okay. What I'm asking then is, are you the claimant, Dwayne Kellum, spelled capital D, lowercase W-A-Y-N-E, uppercase K, lowercase E-L-L-U-M?
That is me.
Okay.
I am
Also
not
appearing by phone. Also, Mr. Kellum, Mr. Kellum, I understand.
Yes,
Understand something on my part. Everything you say, I am clearly getting. Okay, so no need to repeat yourself. Also appearing by phone is a representative for the employer. Could you please state your appearance and the employer you represent?
My name is Paul Ahn, last name spelled A-H-N. I'm an attorney representing Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority.
Thank you. And my understanding also is you have a witness, Michael Scott. Is that correct? He's also appearing by phone?
That's correct. Mr. Scott is on the phone.
Okay. Mr. Kellum, without stating your address
Yes,
and phone number, could you please confirm that the information we have on file is correct?
The information that's on the documents I have?
So the address that the notices were sent to, is that your correct address?
Yes, ma'am.
And the phone number I'm calling you at, is this your correct number?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Mr. Ahn, I only have employer information. Do you want me to add you as the representative in terms of our records?
That's fine.
Okay, and then looking at a document that was submitted, I don't see, strike that. I see an address at the bottom. Should I include that address and the phone number I called for contact information?
Could you read that address for me, please? We do have multiple buildings, and I may need to specify the building.
We don't indicate full addresses on the record, so I will say it's on North First Street.
That's correct. It should also indicate building C-2 if it's going to be sent to my attention.
I'll include that as well. And the phone number I'm calling, add this to our records?
Yes, please.
Okay. And Mr. Kellum, spinning back to you. For this hearing, do you have a representative for you or any witnesses to testify in today's hearing?
Not in today's hearing.
Okay.
I don't have nobody. Yeah.
The purpose of today's hearing is to consider an appeal filed by the claimant from a notice of determination dated 12/8/21, where the department found that the claimant was ineligible to receive benefits under Insurance Code Section 1256, beginning 9/27/20 and continuing until he is returned to work after the disqualifying act and earns $2,250 or more in bona fide employment. This is based on the department's finding that the claimant was discharged from his last job with Santa Clara Valley Transportation because he broke a reasonable employer rule. The claimant is further appealing from the department's finding that the claimant is ineligible to receive benefits under Insurance Code Section 1253C, beginning 9/27/20 and ending when the disqualifying conditions no longer exist. This is based on the department's finding that the claimant was or is occupied with personal activities. The claimant is also appealing from the department's finding that the claimant was ineligible to receive benefits under Insurance Code Section 1253E, beginning 8/1/21 and ending 8/14/21. This is based on the department's finding that the claimant did not look for work in that period of time. Lastly, the claimant is also appealing from a notice of overpayment dated 1/3/22, where the department found that the claimant was overpaid a total of $11,700 for the, 26 weeks listed in that notice of overpayment. The specific issues for today's hearing are as follows. In the case ending in 59, the issue is, under Insurance Code Section 1256, did the claimant voluntarily leave his or her most recent employment without good cause? Was the claimant discharged for misconduct connected with his or her most recent work? In the case ending in 60, the issue is, under Insurance Code Section 1375, was the claimant overpaid benefits? If so, was there any fault on the part of the claimant? If not, would repayment cause an extraordinary financial or other hardship? In the case ending in 61, the issues are, under Insurance Code Section 1253E, did the claimant seek suitable work as reasonably instructed by the department? Number 2, under Insurance Code Section 1253C, has the claimant been able to work and available for work? Mr. Kellum, before the hearing today, did you have an opportunity to review the yellow notices of hearing and the case file?
I was able to review it, but not as thoroughly as I would like to have.
Okay, my understanding is, sir, you received the amended notice, is that correct, on March 9th?
Yes, ma'am.
And you received the initial notice with the case file on March 11th? 12th, excuse me, March 12th, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we're now at March 24th. I'm finding that you had sufficient time to review that case file. Same question to you, Mr. On. Before the hearing today, did you have an opportunity to review the yellow notices of hearing and the case file that was sent with it?
Yes.
I'm now going to review the procedure for today's hearing. I will first mark documents from that case file with exhibit numbers. I'll then ask each of you being Mr. Kellum and Mr. On, if you agree to the admission of these exhibits into evidence. I ask that question because in order for me to consider any document, it has to be admitted into evidence first. If you disagree with the admission of any exhibit, I will hear and rule on your objections. I will then swear Mr. Scott in first, ask him questions concerning the issues that I just read. At the end of my questions, Mr. Kellum, you will have an opportunity to ask Mr. Scott questions. Actually, let me back up. Mr. On, you will have an opportunity to ask your witness questions, and then Mr. Kellum, you will have an opportunity to ask Mr. Scott questions. At the end of Mr. Scott's testimony, I will then hear from you, Mr. Kellum. Swear you in, take your testimony as to the issues that I outlined. At the end of my questions, Mr. On, you will have an opportunity to ask Mr. Kellum questions. At the end of all testimony, I will give both of you being Mr. Kellum and Mr. On, an opportunity to provide any relevant information or make a closing argument. My decision will not be given today. I will send out my decision as soon as possible. It will be sent via mail. If you disagree with the decision, you can file a Board of Appeal. That must be done within 30 days of the mail date stated on the decision. Mr. Kellum, do you have any questions about the procedure I just reviewed?
I do have about you said Board Appeal. What
Yes.
would that be consisting of?
So on that decision, it explains you can file a Board Appeal, meaning you disagree with my decision, right? You can file a Board Appeal. You send that to our office, we process it and send it off to the Board of Appeals. You just got to heed that deadline, okay, the 30 days.
Okay.
Okay? Any other questions about the procedure?
Will I have any information when you send me the decision that you come down with? Will there be any information in there about appealing if it's against me?
Yes. Before the actual decision, that information is provided. Like I said, just make sure you look at the date, the mailing date, and add 30 days to that because that's the deadline.
Okay, well, I live in Missouri right now, and it usually takes 2 weeks for me to get some mail from California.
Okay, so that leaves 2 weeks for you then to file a Board of Appeal if you disagree.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions about the procedure?
None.
Okay, same question, Mr. On. Any questions about the procedure?
No question.
Moving on then to marking of documents in the case file with exhibit numbers. Starting with Exhibit 1, this is a letter on Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority letterhead dated 3/10/22 and enclosures, including what amounts to what looks like a facts and facts cover sheet. This is a total of 4 pages. Exhibit 2 is amended notice of hearing for today's date in the case ending in 59, 3 pages. Exhibit 3 is amended notice of hearing for today's date in the case ending in 63 pages. Exhibit 4 is amended notice of hearing for today's date in the case ending in 61, 3 pages. Exhibit 5 is the notice of hearing for, hold on one second please, the 3 cases ending in 59, 60, and 61 for a hearing date set for 3/23/22. This is a total of 7 pages. Exhibit 6 is a typewritten letter dated 12/18/21, upper left corner, Dwayne S. Kellum. 2 pages. Strike that. 6 pages, including enclosures and a postmarked envelope. Exhibit 7 is a notice of determination dated 12/8/21. 3 pages. Exhibit 8 is a notice of determination dated 12/8/21 sent to the employer. 2 pages. Exhibit 9. Earlier, I'm moving back to Exhibit 8. Earlier, if I indicated strike that.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Hold on 1 second, please. Go ahead.
These pages and stuff that you're referring to, is that in the appeal testamental?
I'm not understanding your question. It's in the case file that was sent to you.
Okay. Well, you're saying a lot of stuff very fast, and I'm kind of having a hard time keeping up with what you're saying.
Okay. What I'm doing, sir?
I have a little packet. I got a packet in the mail for the
Mr.
notice of
Callum.
hearing.
Mr. Callum,
Yes,
what I
ma'am.
am doing, sir, is I am simply marking those documents with numbers. Okay.
Okay. But
So
I
exhibit.
need to find the document that you're marking because I don't. You're going so fast. I can't put down the numbers that you're talking about.
Okay, I'm not asking you to write down those exhibit numbers, sir. I am marking them because what I indicated earlier, in order for me to consider these documents, they have to be admitted into evidence first. So this is like a reference number. I will refer to any documents that I use by what it's entitled.
Okay.
Okay?
I'm just kind of confused. I'm not no legalese person or anything like that.
Understood.
I just need to try to get clear on
Understood.
what's going on.
Exhibit 8, as I indicated, was a notice of determination sent to the employer, and that's 2 pages. Exhibit 9 is a notice of overpayment. That's 2 pages. Exhibit 10 is EDD's record of claim status interview misconduct. 3 pages. Exhibit 11 is EDD's record of claim status interview for efforts to seek work. 4 pages. Exhibit 12 is EDD's record of claim status interview, upper left corner, able and available. 4 pages. Exhibit 13 is the claim information. 2 pages. Exhibit 14 is the claim notes. 3 pages. Exhibit 15 is entitled in the upper left corner, California side separation information, and that is 5 pages. Mr. Kellum, do you agree to the admission of these exhibits into evidence so that I can consider them in your hearing?
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
So,
at all.
Mr. Kellum, is there anything in the packet
Yes,
of information you have in front of you that you are objecting to in terms of being admitted into evidence?
Yes, ma'am.
Please refer to it by what it's entitled at the top.
Okay. Well, a lot of the statements that were written in
Please
here
refer to the
are-
document that you're objecting to by the title at the
I have
top.
to go turn to the page. I have to turn to the page first. Hold on a second. Okay. Record, claim, status, interview, misconduct, MC.
Okay. What's your objection?
In this document, the statements that I made on the are misquoted. They're not quoted the way they're taken out of context.
Okay, so your objection is that there's inaccurate information in these documents?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Anything else?
Let me keep looking.
And my question to you is, as to any other documents that you're objecting to, is it based on that same objection?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any other objections?
Do I have any other
Objections.
Well, yeah. Also, the form
So let me repeat my question, Mr. Kellum. Are there any other and different objections to any of the other documents? Meaning, is your objection that this document contains inaccurate information?
Okay. The document is states record of claim status interviews for efforts to seek work. That stuff was taken out of contents and it's not accurate either.
Okay, so it's the same objection. Is that correct?
Same objection, yeah.
Okay, what I'm asking you, sir, is as to any other documents, is it the same objection?
Most of my objections was how it was written out and how it was termed. The same, just what I'm saying. It's all of this stuff is
okay, when you say
written.
most, then are there any other objections to other documents? Meaning outside of this is inaccurate.
You know, I can just say the whole packet is inaccurate.
Okay, that's what I was getting at. Okay, that's what I was getting at.
Okay.
Now, understand, Mr. Kellum, when you say whole packet, I want to point out here, your appeal is in there.
The parts of the document that
you didn't submit.
People wait a minute. The parts of the document, even with my stuff and the part that I had, and another thing, they omitted one of the letters that I sent them, and they didn't even include it in the document.
Mr. Kellum, let's focus. I'm not off-ramping right now, okay? As to these documents, I want to indicate to you that your appeal is in there. Okay?
Yes.
So, are you objecting to all documents except that one on the basis that there's inaccurate information?
Except the one that I put in there that I wrote myself.
Okay.
Everything that was written by someone else, I have problems with.
Okay, understood. Let me explain to you.
Okay.
I'm not asking about inaccuracies. You will testify and you will be able to clarify. Okay? So, over that objection, I am going to overrule it and I'm going to admit Exhibits 1 through 15 into evidence. Well, sorry, let me back up. Mr. Ahn, I forgot about you. Any objections to the exhibits here?
No objections, but I do have a question. So you mentioned Exhibit 1. I believe it's the letter that we faxed to you with links to videos online as well as 2 CDs that we enclosed that contain the video files.
Are you about to ask me why I didn't admit the 2 DVDs?
Yes, I was going to ask whether they're admitted or if you have them.
I have them. They are not admitted. They are not numbered and not admitted. And so are you asking to admit them?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and mark the DVD as the 2 DVDs. I haven't opened this even. As Exhibit 16. Okay? And the reason why I did not mark, and I will hear from you as to the admission of this DVD, is because I am wholly unable to view it. If this were an in-person hearing, you would have brought in your own device to view this on, for me to view this on. But for these hearings, I'm unable to put anything into our systems or our devices in order to view, hear anything.
Wow, I did speak with a different ALJ who called me back regarding questions about admission of evidence, and she indicated that the video player would be available for this hearing.
That was my presiding judge that you spoke to, and all I can indicate is that is not correct.
Okay. So I received incorrect information then. If that's the case, given the format of the hearing as it is now, are you able to listen to what I can play and hold my phone receiver to?
I'm going to need a foundation established, okay, on that DVD first, number one. And number two is, certainly I can hear from, for instance, Mr. Scott, your witness, if he's viewed these videos, I can hear from him as to his summary of what the videos entailed or what it included. You can also be sworn in, Mr. On, and testify as to the videos as well. But for right now, I am not going to admit, I've marked it as Exhibit 16, I am not going to admit it until I hear about that foundation.
Understood.
Okay? So, as to Exhibits 1 through 15, if I heard you correctly, no objection, correct?
No, correct.
I'll admit Exhibits 1 through 15 into evidence. As to Exhibit 16, I, again, am not admitting into evidence as of right now. I'll hear from you as to foundational issues. Okay?
Thank you.
Moving right along, Mr. Scott. I did not forget about you. If you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct?
I do.
Could you please state your full and complete name?
Michael Lynn Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Are you currently employed?
Yes.
Who do you work for?
DTA.
What is DTA?
Oh, I'm sorry. Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority.
How long have you worked for the employer?
9 years.
What's your title?
I'm a maintenance supervisor.
Do you know Mr. Dwayne Kellum?
I do.
Do you also work for Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority?
Yes, he did.
Did you come to know him through your work?
Yes.
What was your work relationship with him?
I was his supervisor, but before that, we were both mechanics there.
How long was Mr. Kellum employed with Santa Clara Valley?
So are you talking to me or him?
My questions are all for Mr. Scott for right now.
Okay.
As far as I know, 8 years.
Do you know what his last day worked was?
I'm sorry, say again?
Do you know what his last day worked was?
No, I do not. Not off the top of my head.
Do you know about what month or year his last day worked was?
Not exactly.
Do you know what year?
I think it was 2021.
What was Mr. Kellum's title?
Transit mechanic.
Was he full-time or part-time?
Full time.
Did he work certain days of the week?
I don't remember his days of the week, but he worked 5 days a week. I can't elaborate on his days off. I don't remember.
Do you know what his final rate of pay was?
No, I do not.
And you indicated that he left his employment sometime in 2021, is that right?
Yeah, I believe it was 2021. Early.
Are you unsure?
I am unsure. I really don't remember.
Do you know why he left his employment?
I do.
Why did he leave his employment?
He refused to comply with the company policies.
Okay, does that mean that he quit, or does that mean he got laid off? Was he fired?
That means that he refused to comply with the policy, so he was terminated.
And when you say he refused to comply with company policy, what was the company policy that he refused to comply with?
He refused to wear a mask.
What was the company policy?
The policy was that anyone even to be on the VTA premises was to wear a mask at all times. And he refused to wear a mask at all.
Can you briefly describe his duties?
The bus maintenance, mainly light repair, minor repairs of buses.
And this maintenance and his work was performed on the employer's premises?
That's correct.
Okay. And when was this policy implemented?
I remember it was in September that we posted the last notice. I don't remember exactly.
It sounds like you're citing the last time this may have been posted. Do you remember around what time it was first instituted?
Ooh.
So
I really don't know that either. The reason why I don't know some of these things is I was out of work myself during when COVID first hit. I was out for surgery, and when I came back to work.
When did you return to work?
Excuse me?
When did you return to work?
I believe that was in April of 2020.
When you returned in April of 2020, was there a mask policy?
I don't remember exactly.
Okay. So then fast forward to when Mr. Kellum was discharged. You had indicated that the mask policy was in effect at that time?
Yes.
And you mentioned that he refused to comply with that policy?
That's correct.
What does that exactly mean? Meaning, did he not have it on and you or somebody else talked to him, admonished him, or what have you? How was it that he was refusing?
During my rounds as supervisor, I usually walk through the shop, and if I saw anyone not wearing a mask, I would usually tell them to mask up. And he was not alone. There was others that was not wearing a mask, and they would put theirs on, and they pointed him out as someone who refused to wear one. So I asked him to come into the office and speak with me and the other supervisor that was on duty at the time. And we talked with him about him wearing the mask. And it was at the end, near the end of the shift. So I guess we told him that we would carry this conversation on when he comes back to work. But he would have to speak with us before starting the shift, because at that point he told us he was not going to wear a mask. And like I said, it was at the end of the shift, so we weren't able to go into much depth with the conversation. So when he returned to work is when I had a conversation with him, and he had union representation in the conversation.
So he did return to work, and there was that second meeting with the union rep?
Correct.
And in that meeting, what was discussed?
Whether he would, well, first of all, I asked him questions concerning his understanding of the company policy, and he said he refused to wear a mask. That was what it all ended up being. He refused to wear the mask.
So he repeated what he said in the prior meeting?
Correct.
Anything else that took place in that meeting?
Well, the meeting was about an hour long. We discussed quite a few things, but the gist of it all was that he was not in belief of the COVID-19 situation, and he felt that wearing a mask was perpetrating a lie, and he didn't want to take part of that. So he said he refused to wear a mask.
Anything else?
I think that covers it pretty much.
Was he terminated in that meeting or thereafter?
I'm sorry, say again?
Was he terminated in that meeting or thereafter?
No, it was thereafter. There was two more meetings after that. We had a Skelly, and at the Skelly, he brought information about laws and things of that nature, and we were, wanted to make him understand that it had nothing to do with the law. This was a policy of the company based upon CDC guidelines and information that we received as far as safety was concerned, and we made it a policy to keep our employees safe.
Okay, so you mentioned one was a Skelly, you called it a meeting. Was it a Skelly hearing?
Yes, that was a Skelly hearing.
Okay, and then there was another meeting after that?
Yes.
And was he terminated in that meeting?
I believe that's the meeting that the termination took place.
In the Skelly hearing?
It was decided.
In the Skelly hearing or thereafter?
The second meeting is when we had a meeting with the union, and based on our situation, him refusing to comply, that was our only alternative, was to let it go.
And so when you terminated him, did you explain the reason why he was being terminated?
Yes.
Was there a response from him?
He did not attend that
So this was a union meeting with the union rep, but Mr. Kellum wasn't there?
Yeah, Mr. Kellum was not there.
Okay, so you provided the termination notice to the union rep?
I did not, but it was given to the union rep, yes.
In that meeting?
I believe at the end of the meeting it was, yes.
And was that then the reason he was terminated was his refusal to comply with this mask policy?
Insubordination.
Okay, were there any other reasons is what I'm asking?
No.
Okay. Mr. On, do you have questions?
Just briefly, thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Scott. I understand a lot of this happened some time ago. You might not have specific dates, but you did mention that you went over a September memo with Mr. Kellum. Is that right?
That's correct.
What was that memo regarding?
It was a little more strict than the older memos, and it was regarding wearing a mask just being on the property. Before that memo...
okay, well, before you go on, let's stay on that memo for a while. So there was a September memo that, who was it issued by?
Oh, wow. Oh. I got it in my head. I can't remember. But it was...
you don't have to give me the name. What, do you know the title or the position of the person that issued the memo?
Operations.
Okay.
I don't know the exact title.
Okay, so it was from somebody in operations. It was a BTA memo?
Yes.
And it, you said, required all employees to wear a mask. Is that it?
That's correct.
Okay, so that's September 2020, correct?
That's correct.
And you shared the contents of that memo with Mr. Kellum?
I read it to him.
Okay, and this is the morning meeting where he came back to work to discuss not wearing a mask, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, you mentioned...
I'm sorry, that was not in the morning. That was in the afternoon. His shift starts at 4 p.m.
Oh, I see. So it was the following day when he was supposed to meet with you, that meeting. So you noticed that he wasn't wearing a mask the night before. You said, let's talk about it next time you come into work. We're talking about that meeting.
Yes, that's the meeting I'm talking about.
Okay, so that's the September memo. You just mentioned something about an older memo. Can you tell us about that, please?
Yeah, there was a memo in June that discussed wearing a mask, but it was limited to if you could not maintain a 6-foot social distance, then you were to wear a mask. But the September memo superseded that and said that a mask should be worn just being on the property.
Okay. Other than the memo, was there any discussion among your team members, and by that I mean Mr. Kellum and other mechanics in his job classification, about this requirement?
I was told by other TMs there that Mr. Kellum said that he would not wear a mask.
Right, but what I'm saying is, did you ever make it clear to your team members that they have to wear a mask, aside from this meeting?
Absolutely. We had what we call the tailgate meetings, and during the tailgate, it was explained, and that notice that I referred to, both the one from June and September, were posted all over the yard at BTA.
So the memos were posted all over BTA?
Correct.
Okay. Were there any other postings like mask required or anything on BTA property at the time?
Yes. And, proper way to wear a mask was posted. We had, pictures of face with a mask on it, and the proper way to wear a mask, covering your nose and mouth, and things of that nature.
Okay. And you mentioned that you had a meeting with him that lasted about an hour on that first, I guess, significant meeting that you had when he came back to work.
Yes.
Was there anything peculiar about that meeting? Was that recorded?
Yes, that was recorded. Mr. Kellum asked my permission to record it, and I told him fine. He indicated to me that he needed it to record it for his own personal records or whatever, and I felt no need to stop him. He might need that for his own personal records.
Okay. And how was it recorded? What device was used to record that meeting?
He used a video camera.
Okay, so he was recording the meeting himself, Mr. Kellum?
Yes. Yes.
Did you have a chance to view that recording at some point?
I did.
Okay, and where was that? How did you access that recording?
I was informed a few days later that it was posted on YouTube. And so I went to the YouTube channel that it was said to be on, and I watched the video.
And were you able to confirm that it was the meeting that you had with Mr. Kellum that was recorded on that video?
Yes.
Can you describe that video for us? I mean, how does it begin, and what are the contents of that video?
The video starts with Mr. Kellum driving his car to work and explaining that how he felt that he was making a statement or planned to make a statement that he refused to wear the mask, and he was steadfast in his beliefs of the situation, and he refused to wear the mask. So it went from him driving to when he arrived at work and met with the union representatives that were in the meeting with him, and they spoke with him about what they were going to talk about or whatever, and the video showed him trying to badge in, and his badge didn't work, and they assumed that he was already fired, but that was not the case. I really don't remember the reason why, but it had nothing to do with the situation at hand. It was something having to do with attendance.
And that video also depicts. I'm sorry. And that video also depicts you.
Yes. I think I was the star of the show. The camera was aimed at me most of the video.
Okay. And during that meeting, and you mentioned there were subsequent meetings where Mr. Kellum he attended one, the Skelly hearing, and then he failed to show at the subsequent hearing. At any point, did Mr. Kellum indicate to you that his objection to wearing a mask had any medical basis to it? That he had medical reasons why he couldn't wear a mask?
There was a slight allusion to that when he said something about in the video. It explains he said about CO2 being an issue, and
right. I'm not talking about things that generally are said, like, people can't have a hard time breathing, or there's you're breathing in your CO2. I'm asking, did he ever say that he has a medical condition that prevents him from wearing a mask?
No, he did not.
Did he ever tell you that he has a religious basis for not wearing a mask?
No, he did not.
Okay. Nothing further. I'd like to request that I'll represent that the video that we provided to EDD, as well as we also served a copy on Mr. Kellum, is the video that Mr. Scott just explained that he found on YouTube. It is under Mr. Kellum's YouTube channel. It is something that Mr. Kellum himself recorded, and it contains pretty much the entirety of the initial meeting that Mr. Scott had with Mr. Kellum.
Why are there two DVDs?
I think there were two. So there on that YouTube channel. panel, there were two videos. One is called I Was Fired Today, and the second one is called I Was Fired Today 2, I believe. So I Was Fired Today 1 is about an hour-long video of that first meeting with Mr. Scott. I Was Fired Today 2 is a follow-up post that Mr. Kellum posted online that has to do with the circumstances. It's the claimant's own words about why he was fired and what has happened since.
I didn't hear any testimony from Mr. Scott as to the I Was Fired Today 2 video.
Right. I don't know if he's seen that video. DTA is not introducing any evidence to that other than to say that it does. It is the claimant's own statement. So I don't know that there would be any hearsay issues. I don't know if DTA is considering any other issues with respect to those videos.
My question is it sounding like you're not asking to admit then the second video, the I Was Fired Today 2?
I'm asking for at least the first video.
Okay, and then what about the second?
I would leave it up to the judge to decide on that. It is the claimant's own statement.
So you're requesting both to be admitted?
Yes.
Okay, then I'm going to spin back to Mr. Scott. Mr. Scott.
Yes.
Have you viewed this second video that's, I guess, entitled I Was Fired Today 2?
I have.
And can you summarize what this included?
Basically, I understood it to be the aftermath of his termination from BTA and what he was going to do next.
What was he going to do next?
He purchased property in Missouri, and he was moving there. He already purchased the property, and the video was there. He showed the property, and he planned to build a place to live and live off grid and carry on his life.
So was that the video in a nutshell?
Yes.
Okay. In either of these two videos, did he indicate, I'm about to be fired, or I was fired because there's a mask policy and I'm not wearing a mask?
I do believe he said that in the second video.
Okay. And in either of these two videos, did he indicate, I just got fired and I was fired because I refused to wear a mask, and that's policy?
I don't know if those words were used exactly that way, but I believe the second video, I Was Fired Today 2, I believe he does say that.
In either of these two videos, did he indicate any other reason as to why he was terminated?
No.
In the first video where you were the star, did you indicate any other reason as to why he was terminated?
He was not terminated in the first video.
That's right. So let me rephrase. In that first video, was there anything else discussed? Any issues with his work performance? Any issues with his work? And I'm including timeliness, all that. Was any of that discussed in that first video?
No.
Okay.
The only thing that was discussed was him wearing a mask.
Okay. Okay, and also, so I just realized, you indicated, you referred to this memo dated September 2020 that you reviewed with Mr. Kellum. Is that correct?
Yes.
So if that was September 2020, then do you recall about when he was terminated?
I'm assuming it was 2021.
So you think it was the following year?
Yeah, I think it was.
Okay.
Judge, can I have a couple questions?
Of course. Let me just make sure that I covered my questions. Mr. Kellum, is that Mr. Kellum? Yes.
Yes, ma'am. May we take a brief recess? I have to use the restroom.
I'm going to place everyone on hold, and I'm also going to hold the record. Hold on one second. When you return, I'm muting all parties except, well, I shouldn't say all parties. I'm muting myself, so when you return, could you just please indicate that you've returned? If I have not heard from you within 5 minutes, so we're at 2:04 by 2:10, I'm going to hang up and recall you.
Okay, it won't be that long. I just have to walk over to the next room.
Okay, thank you.
All right, bye.
I can hear
Okay.
you, but I don't know if it's...
We're back on the record. Mr. Kellum, can you confirm during that pause in the record and during that break that nothing was discussed?
No, nothing was discussed. I just went to use the restroom and came right back.
Mr. On, same question.
Nothing was discussed.
Thank you. Spinning back to you, Mr. Scott. In that second video, was there anything that was depicted in that video, whether said in actions or what have you, that actually showed Mr. Kellum had already moved to Missouri and was starting to work on this homestead?
No. I did see a travel trailer in the background, but I don't know if it was his or not. So I can't say that with certainty.
But it didn't. Ooh, hold on. Let's make sure that I just heard a jingle, like I heard something. That something was lost. Okay. Nothing. But was there? I guess was that travel trailer? Could you tell the location of it?
How do you mean? Like, was it parked on the street or parked on property or something?
So meaning you wouldn't be able to tell if it was located somewhere in Missouri, somewhere in Texas, somewhere in California, like.
Well, it was in the background, and he alluded to. I'm looking at it right now. It is on the property. It's not on a road.
But when you say property, can you tell where that property is located?
I cannot tell where it's located.
Okay.
I just see it out in a field.
Okay. And I believe I covered my questions. Mr. On, you said you had a few more questions for your witness.
Yes, just real quickly. Mr. Scott, you mentioned you testified that you viewed both of those videos, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now I'm going to refer you to the first video. You saw that on YouTube?
That's correct.
On YouTube, on Mr. Kellum's YouTube page, correct?
Well, I do believe it's on his page, but that's not how I went to it. I went to Dwayne Kellum on YouTube, and I searched Dwayne Kellum, and there were several videos under that heading, and that one was within the group. I had to actually search through it to get to it.
Okay. I have the video right in front of me, and I'm looking at it, and it says it has a September 27th, 2020 date, which I assume is the uploaded date for that video. If that were the case, does that refresh your recollection as to when that meeting might have been? You testified before that you think, you're not sure, but you think it might be 2021. Could it have been in September 2020?
Counsel, I believe that actually misstates his testimony. He did not indicate.
I need to object to that because he's leading the witness.
I'm going to overrule that objection, but I will state this. I think that it misstates the testimony. I believe Mr. Scott had testified that he thought Mr. Kellum's last day worked was in 2021. I don't believe Mr. Scott said that the video date, any date timestamp associated with that video was other than when he sat down with him in that meeting.
I understand. Sorry if there was a misunderstanding on my part. Let me rephrase the question. Mr. Scott, if the video of your interview with Mr. Kellum was uploaded in September of 2020, does that change your recollection as to when Mr. Kellum might have been fired?
Well, okay, are you talking about him being fired or his last day working?
Let's take those one at a time. When was his last day worked from your recollection?
That was September 2020, his last day work.
Okay. Was that the day that you interviewed him?
Yes.
Okay, so that was the last day. And then how soon thereafter was he terminated from employment? Do you remember? Based on that understanding.
That part I'm not sure on. It takes time for the hearings to take place and things of that nature, and that's why I gave the 2021 date, because I think it was months later.
Got it.
That he was actually terminated.
Thank you for that clarification. And Judge, I apologize if I misunderstood his testimony.
And actually, I misspoke too. When I said he testified to a 2021 date as to his last day worked, I meant to say as to his termination date. But we did clarify that. Okay, so any other questions, Mr. Hahn?
No.
Mr. Kellum, questions for Mr. Scott?
Yes, ma'am, I got a couple. Mike, you stated that it was an administrative reason why the time clock didn't work when I went in to punch in?
That's correct.
What type of administration, what was the grounds for that?
I really don't remember. I just know that once I found out the real reason that it was not working the day you attempted to punch in, it rang in my head that, oh man, he thought that he was fired, and it doesn't work that way. We don't fire somebody like on the spot like that. It's usually a process.
Could it have been that my card was already disqualified to where I had no access to the building and I had no access to the time clock?
I'm sorry, repeat the question, please. Repeat the question, please.
The same card that we use to clock in is the card that we use to access gate and to get onto the property. Was my card deactivated at the time that I went in to punch in? That's what I'm asking.
No, it was not. No, it was not.
Okay. You stated that we were both transit mechanics and you became the supervisor later on. Do you remember can you tell me how long we spent together as transit mechanics?
I think it was just during our probation. After probation, I went to O&R.
Mr. Kellum?
During the time that...
Mr. Kellum?
During the time that...
Mr. Kellum?
Yes, ma'am.
If you're about to go into more questions concerning when you all work together as coworkers as opposed to supervisor employee, I'm going to ask what the relevance is. I allowed questions concerning that.
I just want to know what his opinion is of my work ethics and the way I carried myself at work and
then ask the question, please.
If I was
Let's
a
get there.
troublemaker.
Let's get there. Ask the question.
Okay. So time that we worked on the floor, how would you describe my work ethic, and how would you describe how I carried myself and the things that you do, that you saw of me?
As far as a transit mechanic is concerned, working for VTA, you were the model employee.
Okay, and as a supervisor, did I ever have to be called into the office for disciplinary reasons or any other thing other than this COVID-19 mask rule?
Not that I know of. I was a supervisor at O&R for a few years before I came back over to Cerrone. So I don't know what was going on when I was over at O&R.
Well, while you were working as my supervisor, did you ever have to call me in for any kind of disciplinary actions or poor work or any other bad marks? Were there any other bad marks on my record that you put on there?
No.
Okay. Earlier you stated that I wasn't at the second meeting. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Do you recall me sitting outside on the bench at the second meeting when you walked up to go into the meeting?
I do.
Okay, so I was present at the building for the second meeting, wasn't I?
Yes.
But I was refused access to the second meeting.
Correct.
Do you know why I was refused access to the second meeting?
I'm allowing this questioning, but get to the point again.
He refused to wear the mask in the meeting, so
Okay.
he couldn't attend the meeting.
Were you present at the first Scully meeting that we had?
Yes.
Were special accommodations made for the Scully hearing so that I can attend it?
Again, Mr. Kellum, unless you're about to testify to something totally different, meaning I was not at that Scully hearing, okay?
Well,
what's the relevance of this line of questioning?
Because I refused to wear a mask at VTA, and during the Scully meeting, VTA made accommodations for me to have the meeting outdoors. They would not do the same thing for the second meeting.
Okay, so what is the relevance of this line of questioning? Remember the issues that we discussed at the beginning of the hearing. That's why we're here.
Well, the reason why I was fired was because I wouldn't participate in the lie of COVID.
So what does the Scully hearing, any accommodations at that hearing or subsequent meeting, how is that relevant is what I'm asking.
I was not allowed to be in the second meeting. It wasn't because I didn't want to be in the second meeting. I was there to be in the second meeting.
Okay, no one has testified to you wanting to be there or not. And again, I'm not sure if it's relevant, but I'm spinning back to let me finish. Please let me finish. Mr. Kellum. Mr. Kellum. I'm sorry. Please let me finish. What I am saying is that remember why we're here. Okay? I'm allowing you some degree of leeway, but again, we are off-ramping seriously here. So what's the relevance? Making accommodations, not making accommodations, you wanting to be there, not wanting to be there, what's the relevance is my question. Does that have to do with why you were fired?
I brought that up.
Does it have to do with why you were fired?
Yes. The reason why I brought
Then ask him that question directly, please. Get to it is what I'm saying.
I got no more questions for that witness.
Okay. Spinning then to you, Mr. Kellum, could you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give? You know what? Pause. Pause. No, it was not. I was not breaking up. I'm going to pause and go back. I just realized, Mr. On. I have no questions concerning Mr. Kellum's questioning of Mr. Scott. Is there any follow-up that you wanted to ask your own witness?
No.
Okay, then now spinning to Mr. Callum. If you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct?
I will tell the truth.
Could you please state your full and complete name?
Samuel Kellum.
Thank you, Mr. Callum. I want to make sure. You submitted an application for benefits online October 11th, 2020. Does that sound right?
Could you repeat that question? I couldn't. You were speaking kind of fast. I couldn't
Sure.
quite make out.
You submitted an application for benefits on October 11, 2020 online. Does that sound correct?
That sounds about right.
And before filing that application for benefits, who was your last employer?
Santa Clara Valley, DTA.
Okay.
Santa Clara County Valley Transportation Authority.
Okay. What does the acronym DTA stand for?
Valley Transit Authority.
Oh, VTA. Okay. That makes sense. I was hearing DTA. Okay. Did you work as a transit mechanic for Santa Clara Valley?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
And what was your final rate of pay?
I want to say it was around $49 an hour.
And were you full-time?
Yes, ma'am.
How many days a week did you work?
5 days.
Did you work on certain days of the week?
I don't remember my days off, but we worked 5 days.
Okay.
We had different days off depending on what shift we did on. I think I was off on Wednesday and Thursday.
Okay, and
but I can't read for sure.
The description of your summary of duties, bus maintenance, light repairs, was that correct?
Could you repeat that question, please?
The description that Mr. Scott provided of your duties being bus maintenance, light repairs, as a transit mechanic, was that correct?
Yes, ma'am. I was a mechanic to repair buses.
Okay. And did you work there for about 8 years?
No, ma'am.
How many years did you work there?
Almost 7. About 6 years, 9 months or so.
Okay. And what was your last day worked?
September 27th, 2020.
And were you ultimately terminated?
Yes, ma'am.
What date was that termination date effective?
The termination date effective was October 20th, 2020, 5 p.m.
Got it. And why were you terminated? Your understanding.
Because, what VTA says is because I was being insubordinate.
And is that what you were told?
Well, let me see. Let me read the letter. Let's see. The letter's kind of lengthy, so I'm not really sure as to the exact reason why they terminated me.
Okay, so
They terminated me for not complying with the mask rule.
Okay, so you had mentioned you thought it was generally insubordination and that it was for not following the mask rule. Is that correct?
For not following the mask rule.
What was the mask rule?
That we had to wear the mask from the time we walked onto the property to the time we got off the property.
Was there any other reason mentioned to you as to why you were terminated?
No, just that I was being insubordinate for not following or not going along with the crowd.
Okay. And so I am now moving to the other two issues in this case. Okay? So actually, to be precise, more precise, are there 3 issues in this case? After filing your claim for benefits, so your claim became effective 9/27/20. So beginning with that date, were you able and available to work?
I was able to work, and I was available to work, but I wasn't at that time trying to look for work.
So you had no physical or mental issues that would have prohibited you from working?
No.
And you had no other commitments, meaning, or no other things you had to do? So some examples would be, let me get to the question mark. I'm sorry, Mr. Kellum, let me get to the question mark. Some examples would be, I have to care for my child. I can't work. I have to help my parents with their business. Can't work. Anything like that.
During the first part of my clarifications, I was actively trying to get my job back, or try to find a way of getting my job back. That didn't stop until November of the second meeting. I think it was in November.
Okay, but that wasn't my question. My question was, is after filing your claim for benefits and starting 9/27/20, was there anything that rendered you unavailable to work? Not unable, but unavailable to work.
Other than me trying to get my job back, no, nothing.
When you say you're trying to get your job back, you're saying that prevented you from being available for work?
No, I could have gone to work, but
okay.
I was busy trying to get my job back.
Okay.
Why would I go to work for somebody else if I can get my job back?
But that's not my question, sir. I'm trying to determine, were you available? And it sounds like you're saying, yes, I was available. I was just trying to get my job back in that same time.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Yeah, I was available to work. I could work.
Yeah. Okay. And then after that period up to November where you were trying to get your job back, did you remain available to work?
In November, that's when I decided to move. And so I was moving, and so I wasn't available to work while I was moving.
How long did it take you to move?
We moved from California to Missouri, so that took a while. We had to undo the house, and I want to say we got in Missouri around the 28th or so, somewhere around there.
I'm sorry, in 20 days?
It was around the end of November when we finally got settled in. Well, not really settled, but when we finally got everything moved to Missouri, around the 28th of November.
And how long were you in the move process before November 28th, 2020?
It took us, after I got my letter of termination, that was October.
So again, I'm bringing you back to my question. When did you start? When did you start the move process?
It took us to do it.
It
took us a while to do it. I want to say it was about a month of time.
So you started the move process about. So you started the move process about October 28th, 2020.
I want to say it was close to around that time, yeah.
After November 28th.
Get everything moved out.
After November 28th, 2020, were you available to work?
No, not at that time because I was busy getting my homestead going.
Okay, and after November 28th, 2020, did you become available to work? Meaning where your homestead got done, or you decided, I'm not going to work on this.
My homestead is still not finished. I'm still working on it.
Okay, so if you would have allowed me, Mr. Kellum.
I didn't.
Oh, Mr. Kellum? I'm sorry, Mr. Kellum. So this is why, if you could let me get to my question, okay? After November 28th, 2020, did you become available to work at some point? Meaning homestead is done, or I'm not going to work on it anymore.
Meaning homestead is not done. No.
And did you decide?
I'm still working on it.
Okay, so meaning you remain unavailable to today.
Till today, right to this minute, second. I'm still not available.
EDD saying that for the 2 weeks ending 8/14/21 that you did not look for work in those 2 weeks. Is that correct?
Which document is that on?
It's actually in the notice of determination.
I think I listed on all of my documents I was not available.
Okay, so but my question was just as to those 2 weeks.
No on everything.
Okay, so my question was just as to those 2 weeks, and it sounds like you indicated that you didn't look for work for those 2 weeks?
No. I haven't looked for work for a while.
So
all of the weeks that I clarified, I said no on that question.
Going to the notice of overpayment. If you look at that notice of overpayment, there's columns of dates listed.
Notice of overpayment.
Let me know when you're there, please.
I'm trying to find it.
Sure.
I don't see a page that says notice of overpayment, but I'm looking.
Let me ask you this way: was your maximum benefit amount set at $450 per week?
I'm sorry, ma'am. Can you
was your
repeat that question?
Was your maximum benefit amount set at $450 per week?
Yes, ma'am.
And let me just make sure about this. October, November, December. Nope. Yeah, you're going to have to refer to that document because there's a break in dates.
Yes, see
okay.
Here. Okay. It's the one that says BYB 92720 on the top?
A lot of them probably say that. What you're looking for is it says Employment Development Department, and right under that it says Notice of Overpayment.
Hold on one second.
Judge, if I may interject, Mr. Scott is currently on a injury leave, and he accommodated us to appear as the witness. May he be excused at this time?
I have to confirm that there's no questions for Mr. Scott from Mr. Kellum. Mr. Kellum, any questions further for Mr. Scott?
No further questions for Mr. Scott.
I don't have any questions for Mr. Scott either. So long as you don't have any questions, Mr. On, yes, he can be excused.
Sure. I mean, unless something comes up unexpectedly, I would ask that Mr. Scott be excused, but
Subject
Subject to recall and standby?
Subject to recall and standby, but it's for today.
Correct.
Yes, that's fine.
Thank you, Mr. Scott.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Have a nice day.
You too.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Okay, so Mr. Kellum, I'm going to ask you the question
Yes,
in this
ma'am.
way, okay? For the month of October, EDD is saying that they paid you $450 for each week in the month of October. Is that correct?
$450, yes, ma'am.
For the month of November, EDD is saying that they paid you $450 for each week. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that was the base pay that I got all the time, so it was $450 every time.
For the 3 weeks ending December 19, 2020, EDD is saying they paid you $450 for each of those weeks. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then from there, for the 13 weeks ending May 8th, 2021, EDD is saying that they paid you $450. Is that correct?
What date was that, ma'am?
Week ending May 8th, 2021, it was the, did I say 14? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Yep, for the 14 weeks ending May 8th, 2021, EDD is saying that they paid you $450 for each of those weeks. Is that correct?
I would like to really confirm this. I'm looking on here. I think my last payments was in May of 2021. So I can't really be for sure, but I remember getting paid for $450 until I think it was in May was the last time I got a payment.
Okay. You know, I had asked you earlier, what was your understanding of why you were terminated? But I realized I neglected to ask you the obvious here, which is you already testified your understanding of what the mask policy was, which was you had to wear a mask right when you entered and up until when you left the premises. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you refuse to wear a mask when you entered and up until when you left the premises?
Yes, ma'am. I felt that was a morally wrong thing for me to do. I could not live with myself if I did that.
Okay. No other questions? Mr. On, questions for Mr. Kellum?
Yes, if I can have just 1 minute, I need to refer back to my notes here.
Sure.
Mr. Kellum, so you had that meeting with Mike Scott that you video recorded in September of 2020, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and prior to that, DTA had a masking policy for all its employees, correct?
Can you rephrase that question? Can you say again?
Sure. So prior to your meeting with Mike Scott, there was a policy at DTA that required its employees to wear a mask while on DTA property, correct?
That policy came into effect on September 2nd, 2020.
Okay.
The other policy was just to have it on your property, on your hand, in your pocket, in case you become within 6 feet of someone else.
Got it. But then after the policy, so you're saying September 2nd, you had to have your mask on at all times while you're on DTA property. Am I understanding
That's
you correctly?
that was when that notice was put out.
Okay. And from the time that that notice went out, you objected to that?
I personally objected to it. Because of moral reasons.
Right.
But
you refused to wear a
but
mask.
no one really gave anybody
Got it.
That's when I was called into office for the meeting with Scott. I mean, with Mike Scott. Yeah.
Thank you.
But before that, no one else had ever come up to me and said anything to me about not wearing a mask face to face. They just had the notices up everywhere, and I would say that most of the people wasn't even complying with the notice.
Okay, but
it became an issue. It became an issue when Mike Scott called me into the office and told me that from that point on, everybody was going to have to wear the mask.
Right.
And then that's when I told Mike Scott.
Thank you for that clarification. I think you answered my question.
Okay.
When you were asking Mr. Scott some questions, I think I heard you say something about, and I quote, the COVID lie. Can you tell us more about? Is that the belief that you held back in September of 2020?
It's not a belief; it's a fact.
Okay, tell us about this fact that you believe.
I don't believe it. I know it to be true.
Okay, tell us about it.
We are.
I'm going to allow some degree of leeway, counsel, on this issue, but again, I believe we're off-ramping. He wasn't terminated for the belief. He was terminated for his refusal to wear the mask.
Right, and I think this goes to willfulness, but we can keep it short. If he has an immediate response, thank you for entertaining that.
It's a lot of things. It's a whole lot. That question is too deep or too involved for me to get into right now.
Okay, but you don't think masks are effective? That's what you think?
No, I
don't think.
I'm sorry, Mr. I'm going to stop you right here. That's a misstatement. I don't believe Mr. Kellum has testified that masks are effective. So if you want to rephrase the question, please rephrase the question.
Let me ask it in an open-ended way. You have an objection to wearing masks. What is that objection?
I have an objection to lying. I have an objection to lying. And if I put the mask on, I will be lying to myself, and I will be lying to everyone else that sees me wearing that mask. That's what I have an objection to. It's a moral issue. It's not anything to do with health. It's not anything to do with safety or whatever you want to call it. It's a moral issue that's the main focus of my argument. If I put that mask on, I would be lying to myself and I would be lying to others, and I refuse to do that.
Next question.
Nothing further.
Mr. Kellum?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I want to address some housekeeping issues now with first Mr. Kellum and then with Mr. On. Okay, and what I mean by housekeeping is, Mr. Kellum, you indicated that you wanted 3 witnesses from DTA to testify. Can you give me in a nutshell what they would have testified to?
Mike Scott was one of the witnesses that I wanted to.
Can you give me in a nutshell what all the witnesses would have testified to?
As to my character, how I carried myself at work, if I was a problem worker, or if I was not going to work, not wanting to be there, causing trouble. And then for the other witness, the director, the deputy director of transit operations, Heidi Samuels, I was going to ask her some specific questions on how she created the face mask must be worn in the division at all times rule. I had some specific questions that I wanted to ask her.
Why is that relevant?
On how she came, because I was fired for this notice. This notice is the reason why I was fired.
But are you disputing if the notice, Mr. Kellum, are you disputing if the notice existed or not?
No, I'm not disputing it. The notice does exist. I just dispute their reason for making the notice in the first place.
That issue is not before
That's
me.
what I dispute.
That issue is not before me. What else would these witnesses have testified to?
I was going to get them to testify about me, the person I am.
You already indicated that. What else?
Yeah.
What
that
else?
was the gist to it. Other than Heidi Samuels, the deputy director of transit operations, I wanted to ask her some questions about the notice that I was fired for.
Okay, so the question that I just asked you is what else? Meaning, is there anything other than what you've already indicated?
That's all I was going to ask.
Okay, so I'm going to go back and address basically what amounted to your work performance. Mr. Scott testified to that. So based on that, I'm deeming any witnesses who would have testified to that as well as cumulative. And I have already ruled on why this director's testimony would be irrelevant. Moving on to your second item. You said that you wanted to get documents from EDD. In a nutshell, what would these documents have said?
I wanted the EDD to supply me with the conversations I had with EDD employees, and I also wanted them to...
Why is that relevant?
Because one of my arguments that I was going to say was EDD was completely and totally aware of my clarifications, on all my clarifications, because I wrote down the truth on everything that I did, everything that I was doing, and so they was completely aware that I wasn't working for the entire time that I was filing claims for unemployment, and they disregarded their own rules.
Do you mean
they made changes?
I'm sorry, Mr. Callum. Mr. Callum, do you mean that you indicated you weren't seeking work during that time and that you truthfully indicated that on the forms?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Okay, because you just stated something
on.
different. You just stated something different, so I want to make sure we're on the same page. Okay? You not working is a given. Okay? What I'm saying is did you mean that you stated you weren't seeking work on these forms? Because you weren't. Is that right?
I wasn't seeking work during the time, but the thing is, let me put it to you this way. I think it was
Mr. Kellum?
October when
Mr. Kellum, can I just ask you, I'm trying to get to what is it that these documents are going to show? And you're saying the documents are going to show that I was truthful on these forms, indicating I'm not seeking work. Is that right?
I wasn't seeking work, and I'm not seeking work now.
Okay, so is there anything else on these forms that would have been shown had you gotten them and had they been admitted into evidence?
Can you repeat that?
Anything else? Anything else on these documents that, had you gotten them from EDD and had they been admitted into evidence, would have shown?
I was going to use that information to make a point.
What's the point?
And, that's what I was trying to get to when you interrupted me and stopped me. Okay. When I filed for unemployment, I put down on the forms each time that I wasn't seeking work at the time, and I expected not to get a penny. I didn't expect anything to come. And because I was writing myself down disqualifying questions so I could not get paid. But EDD didn't follow their own rules and guidelines and paid me anyway. So I figured that it was okay. They was going to pay me money no matter what I put on the form.
Mr. Callum, Mr. Callum, I'm going to interrupt you again.
Mr.
Callum,
I could have said that, but that wouldn't have been
Mr.
true.
Kellum, I'm going to interrupt you again. These documents absolutely would not have shown what your intent was, right? It would not have shown that you did not expect money. It would not have shown that you were writing down questions with the intent of not getting money.
Well, let me get on with what I was gonna say. Okay.
Get there,
now,
please.
Had the EDD denied my first claim, I wouldn't have filled out another claim out.
Mr. Kellum, there is no document, as far as I know, that would exist in EDD's records, electronic or otherwise, that would show, had you not filed a claim, this is what would have happened. So, what is it that these documents would have shown?
On the EDD record that you have in front of you, was there ever a time that I wrote down, yes, I was working, or I was available for work, or whatever?
Mr. Kellum, I'm asking you.
Did I answer any of those forms? Did I answer any of those forms in a way that?
Mr. Kellum, I'm asking you for what's called an offer of proof. I'm asking you for what's called an offer of proof. Okay? I'm asking you, what would these documents have shown? Do you understand?
Well, I needed them to put them together so that I can make a point.
What's the point, though, is my question.
The EDD refused to follow their own rules and guidelines and paid a person that they shouldn't have paid.
Okay, is that it?
That's not on me. That's on them.
Is that it?
Let's see. It was more to it than this. When I spoke to people on the telephone, the people that I spoke to told me that they wasn't following the rules and the guidelines on the phone. That was the reason why I wanted those voice recordings of my conversations with the people that I spoke with on the EDD. And then another thing, EDD showed me that they could disqualify me at any time that they wanted to, and they didn't do it. And they did it because I answered another question on the form in a negative way, and they disqualified me. If they can disqualify me for that question, then they could have disqualified me for the very first one that I put on. It had they chose to do so. They chose not to do so.
Any other reasons why these documents would be relevant?
That's it.
As to your continued claim forms, and as to you being told EDD would have disqualified you for another reason, and as to the issue that EDD wasn't following their own guidelines, and I believe you just said an EDD representative indicated that to you, you just testified to all of that. Third item.
I just have to what?
You just testified to all of that. You provided evidence of all that. You testified to it. Third item.
Okay.
Recordings of conversation with an investigator. What investigator? Please give this to me in a simple title. What investigator?
I don't know the investigator's name. But
who was the investigator with?
But it was a person that interviewed me the last time.
Investigator with VTA, investigator with EDD. What investigator is what I'm saying?
Are you talking about the phone interview I got from the EDD?
Mr. Kellum, I don't know what you're talking about. You asked.
Oh, okay. So I was talking about the ladies that I spoke to. They called me up from EDD and they asked me some of the questions that you're asking me right now, and I told them the truth.
So you've already testified to these conversations, correct? You just testified to this, correct?
I don't understand. What do you mean by I just testified to the question?
You just mentioned phone calls with the EDD, right, with various
yes,
representatives. So we've
people.
already talked about it, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And I've already addressed it, correct?
Not really fully.
What other phone calls besides what you've already testified to that you want admitted into evidence? Other phone
Okay,
calls,
I
other than what you've already testified to.
I want the phone call submitted from the December when they stopped payments because I had moved and I put on the form that I had changed my address and they canceled my EDD. But then they reinstated it.
Why is that relevant, sir? Why is that relevant? Why is that stop and start?
That goes to show that EDD was paying me payments knowing, because I'm the one who told them that I wasn't working. They knew. I could have been lying the whole time and said I was looking for work, but I didn't.
That phone call is not going to be able to crack your head open and get what your intent was or what your thinking was, number one. And number two is that, so you know, on the claim information, it shows that payments did not go out to you. It looks like for starting from the week after the week ending December 19, 2020, up to the week ending February 6, 2021. Regardless, you just testified.
That was during the time when
I'm sorry, let me finish, sir. Mr. Kellum, let me finish, sir. And on top of that, you've already testified to the same. Any other phone calls?
Well, the phone calls for that took place in December, I think. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so I've addressed those three items. Turning to you, Mr. On.
Yes.
Your witness testified to basically I would say, you know, Cliff Note version. I don't know if you all are old enough for that, but to the summaries of the two DVDs that you wanted admitted into evidence. Okay. I noticed you didn't ask any questions concerning those two DVDs to Mr. Kellum. Are you still requesting that the DVDs be admitted?
Yes, and I apologize if I neglected to ask Mr. Kellum. I don't think he's denying that he uploaded them. I'm happy to clarify that with the witness if necessary.
I think what the issue that I'm having here is, and again, I allowed a leeway on the DVDs in terms of Mr. Scott's testimony, but the issue I'm having is, what's the relevance of the two DVDs? Assuming Mr. Scott's testimony was correct, right? And assuming that foundation can be laid as to these two DVDs, what's the relevance of them?
Mr. Scott's testimony wasn't fully correct.
I'm sorry, Mr. Kellum. Hold on, stop. Mr. Kellum, that question was directed at Mr. On. Mr. On, what's the relevance?
Judge, that's a good point. I mean, at this point, when I requested them to be admitted, I obviously didn't have the benefit of hindsight and what Mr. Kellum was going to testify about. But given what's in the record, I don't know that they would add anything to what's already been testified about. VTA is happy to withdraw its request.
Okay, so based on that, I'm not going to admit Exhibit 16. Turning to you, Mr. Kellum, is there anything you want to add to the record or any closing argument?
I want you to resubmit Exhibit 16 and view exactly what took place and see for yourself what took place.
What's the relevance of it, sir?
So you can have an understanding as to what took place.
My understanding is based on your testimony and based on Mr. Scott's testimony. That I am deeming, as of this point, cumulative.
But it's not full.
I don't know what you mean by that. I do not know what you mean by that, sir.
It's not complete.
So then complete it. Testify to what you believe is relevant that hasn't been testified to.
Okay, to make it complete, let's just sit down right now and look at the video right now. Let's all of us sit down and look at the video.
Mr. Kellum, I'm going to repeat my question. Okay? You're saying your testimony is incomplete. So then complete it. This is your opportunity to add any relevant information. If you're saying there's something that did not make it on the record concerning that DVD or those DVDs, complete it, please.
I take back what I said. You can go ahead and go on with your picture.
Anything else you want to add to the record besides what has to do with the DVDs? Any closing?
No. Are you talking to me or the
Mr. Kellum? Mr. Kellum.
Okay. I have nothing else to say.
Mr. On, anything, well, since you didn't testify, any closing?
Yes, just real briefly. As the judges are well aware, this case isn't about Mr. Kellum's integrity or his work performance. We had no problems with that, but ETA's position is that EDA's finding that claimant was discharged for misconduct and is not eligible for UI benefits should be upheld. Section 1256 specifically provides that safety rules are almost always reasonable, and employers may establish them to protect the safety of employees. That's exactly what BTA did. We're talking about September of 2020, 6 months after the state of California declared an emergency because of COVID-19. As with other employers, BTA was mandating safety requirements to protect its employees and its customers. Here, Mr. Kellum outright refused to abide by those safety rules. And as a result of that, and solely because of that, he was terminated from employment in October of 2020. Those actions substantially jeopardized BTA's interest in keeping its workforce safe. To allow him to come to work and not wear a mask would have jeopardized his safety as well as the workers around him. His actions were deliberate. His testimony shows that. He believes that COVID-19 is a lie. He doesn't. He remained adamant about not masking, so much so that even at his termination hearing that he wanted to attend, he refused to wear a mask and wasn't admitted into the building. Such actions were willful in nature and it substantially jeopardized BTA's interest in keeping its workforce safe, and for those reasons, BTA would request that the underlying decision to deny the benefits be upheld. Thank you.
May I redress?
Go ahead.
BTA, you stated that the BTA wanted to keep their workforce safe, and I was adamant about not wearing a mask. Did the BTA offer me a leave of absence during the time when the mask rule was in effect, and that way I wouldn't have been at work to violate the rule? Did they give me any other opportunity to address to anything other than termination? Is what I'm saying. Could they have just gave me a leave of absence until this whole crisis was over with? I would have took an unpaid leave of absence. I didn't want to be not working. I was planning on retiring at BTA. And BTA jumped, they were out of fear, they jumped to the most thing that they could do, and that was be to terminate me. When they could have sat down and said, well, Mr. Kellum, if you don't want to wear a mask, what about, hey, why don't you take a leave of absence until this blows over? I would have been okay with that.
Mr. Kellum, I didn't hear any testimony as to leave of absence. So can I ask you that question then, since you're bringing it up?
Okay.
As far as you know, does BT... I'm sorry, Mr. Kellum, let me get to the question. As far as you know, does VTA have a leave of absence policy?
They have leave of absence policy, yes, ma'am.
Okay, and wait.
When you're sick or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, they do have leave of absence policy.
Okay, and was a leave of absence offered to you before the termination?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
They went straight to termination.
Got it. So please proceed with your closing. Well, again, Mr. Arn, do you have any questions about the leave of absence testimony?
I do not.
Okay. Again, proceed with your closing, please, Mr. Kellum.
I said just about all I want to say at this time.
Okay. I allowed Mr. Kellum to address what should have been sort of a rebuttal closing, but he went beyond that, so Mr. Arn will allow you to do the same. Any other closing argument?
No, not from VTA.
Okay. With that, I appreciate both your time. This was a 2-hour hearing, so needless to say, I'm hoping we got everything in. I appreciate your time. My decision will go out as soon as possible. And with that, you all take care.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
bye.
Bye-bye.